Hi everybody, today I'm presenting a turn summary session report of Dien, the War in Indochina, published by S.D.C. in 1973. I covered the main rules in a previous video, so feel free to check that out on my channel if you need a better context for what follows. The purpose here is to simply demonstrate how the game works in practice, and as always just to tell a war story with some added audio-visual flair, and I'm going with a simple voiceover format for this one for a change. See how it goes, see how I like it. Okay, so how to solo a two-player game, one that involves double-blind movement and one-to-one combat resolution, no less. Actually wasn't hard. It's actually a lot easier than to organize a live opposed playthrough. I'd need a studio setup and more cameras for something like that, but maybe one day. In the meantime, here is what I did for Dien. Every turn I made 4 separate movement plots for each side, and I numbered them from 1 to 4. I tried to make the options range from very aggressive, the number 1s, to more defensive, trap-laying variants, the number 4s. The 2s and 3s were more balanced battle strategies. I rolled 1d4 for both the Viet Minh and the French at the start of each turn to determine how each side reacted. It is no more complicated than that. I resolved any and all combat situations with the aid of the diagrams provided in the rules. And I also resolved the one-to-one combat scenarios with 1d4 rolls on the battle matrix. And there you have it. That's all I needed to do to run the game by myself. And so without further delay, here is the initial setup. Spring of 1951 saw both the Viet Minh and the French open the war with relatively balanced battle strategies. And that's just how my custom system happened to work out on the first turn. So let's take a look at the French movement orders. Before I begin, please excuse my pronunciation of some of these names. They're unfamiliar to me, so feel free to correct me in the comment section because I want to say them right. Okay, Colonel de Castries orders the 2nd Colonial Regulars airlifted from Lê Chau into the Dien Bien Phu firebase. 1st Colonial Regulars retreat because they're too exposed in Cao Bang, so they fall back into Lang Son, a more safe defensive position. The rest of the French effort is much more aggressive in nature. It's meant to wrest control of Hoa Binh from the Viet Minh's 320th Infantry Division. The French are prepared to bring in overwhelming firepower to do this. 1st Airborne Battle Group, the 13th Foreign Legion Demi Brigade, 1st Naval Assault Division, all from Hanoi, along with the 4th Naval Assault Division and the 4th Regimental Combat Team from Tai Binh, are all committed to this objective. And finally, everything from Haiphong moves up to then cover Hanoi from the rear. If General Giap decides to defend Hoa Binh on the first turn, he's going to be in a world of hurt. But let's see what the Viet Minh have in store for the French. It just so happened that the Viet Minh did not elect to defend Hoa Binh at the start of the war. They pulled out just before the French arrived. There was a variant that saw a stand in Hoa Binh, but it was not selected. Instead, the 320th Division had orders to enter Laos through the Sam Nua province. They take supplies with them, of course. Moving north, the 316th Division moves across 2 provinces from Bac Can in a southwesterly direction all the way to Nha San. The 312th stays put in Ha Giang to guard the entire Viet Bac region of Vietnam. The 308th splits in 2. One half goes to Lao Cai, and the other half takes Lê Chau in the interior. Ultimately, as a result of the spring 1951 maneuvers, the Viet Minh gained 4 territories, but do lose 1 to the French. Moving forward, it looks like the French are going to have to try to cast much broader nets, otherwise they could find themselves playing whack-a-mole with the Viet Minh, where they eventually lose Vietnam piece by piece. So not a great start for the French. It could have been a lot worse, but turn 1 still ends up being a very big swing and a miss for blue. Turn 2 spans the summer of 1951. We will resolve the French side first. Just keep in mind, in actuality, the Viet Minh plot simultaneously. It's not like either side really knows what the other is planning to do round around. Both sides always just have to go with best guesses. Anyway, the French decide to rush their 2nd Regimental Combat Team reinforcements right to the front lines in Hoa Binh, so they can immediately join in a major offensive alongside the 4th Regimental Combat Team and the 13th Foreign Legion Group. These forces will press west, farther into the interior with the aim of capturing Hoi Duan. Naval Assault Division 1 heads south to cover Vinh Province. Naval Assault Division 4 stays put to defend Hoa Binh. Farther north, Naval Assault Division 3 and GM1 will attempt to capture Yen Bay. This is a risky budget move. The French are betting two valuable units that the Viet Minh will simply not want to seriously contest another riverine province this early in the game. A third and final offensive sees colonial regulars from Lang Son and the 3rd Regiment from Hanoi converging on Tai Nguyen from the south and east, while DNA 2 hangs back and guards Lang Son. The 1st Airborne also flies into Dien Bien Phu to join the colonial regular garrison. French assume the Viet Minh are not willing to commit their entire army against the fortress, at least not at this time. Overall, it's a much more aggressive look from De Castries, and let's see how the Viet Minh respond. It's a mixed response from General Giap, but with more reinforcements available this turn, the Viet Minh start to get aggressive. The 304th Infantry Division deploys into Cao Bang, and the 351st Artillery Division arrives in Phong Sali. The 312th Infantry Division moves up into Bac Con. In the south, the 320th Infantry cuts behind the French 1st Naval Assault Division. The two formations just miss each other, but this leaves the Viet Minh in control of Thanh Hoa. In the center of the map, we see the first battle take place in Hoi Duan. Two French regimental combat teams and a foreign Legion Demi Brigade will face down the Viet Minh's 316th Infantry Division. The French are the aggressors. It's a 3-2 situation, but in this game the attackers get grounded down, so for the first time we will need the combat resolution matrix. As a result of the battle in Hoi Duan, the Viet Minh are forced to retreat back to Nha San for a cost of 1 supply. The French win their first battle, but the 4th Regimental Combat Team is effectively eliminated in the process of taking the ground. French will have to wait 2 full turns or seasons before those losses are replaced. So that's an interesting outcome. The French are weakened, but the Viet Minh's cause isn't helped much either whenever they lose supplies by getting pushed backwards. So we'll have to wait and see what happens as a result of this. As it stands now, the Viet Minh control 9 territories, while the French control 11. It's turn 3, the fall of 1951. The French get no help at the beginning of this round. De Castries knows he's in a winning position, but it's still very early. Most of his options are of the hold the line variety, but it just so happens that the powers that be demand even more progress. So in the south, Naval Assault Divisions 1 and 4 plan to hit the Viet Minh in Thanh Hoa from the north and south. Maybe the French can catch the 320th Infantry Division at 1-to-1 odds. In the north, both the 1st Colonial Regulars and the 3rd Regimental Combat Teams receive orders to march north into Cao Bang. Everything else stays put. Let's see what happens. General Giap knows he has an advantage this season, so he decides to press a major attack against the French from the north into Tai Nguyen. This offensive preempted the French plan, so for the cost of 2 supply tokens, the Viet Minh are going to be able to send the French reeling back into the city as the countryside falls into enemy hands. In the south, the 320th Infantry Division planned to move against Hoi Duan, but they sensed the French Naval Assault Divisions coming after them, so instead they decided to stand their ground and meet the threat in Thanh Hoa instead. The Viet Minh save a supply token by standing pat. The battle matrix declared the following result. A disaster for the French. All attacking units retreated, with 1 also being destroyed. Other less significant developments saw the 351st Artillery Division move up into Sam Nua, supplies being rushed south to the 316th Division in Nha San, and finally guerrilla fighters emerge in the Sam Nua province of Laos. This is the situation at the end of turn 3. Tai Nguyen is contested, the Viet Minh control 9 provinces, and the French barely control 10. The French are technically still winning, but now it's official. The French are in trouble already. Their entire war effort is in a precarious position. It's obviously under strength. It's taken significant losses. The 1st Naval Assault Division won't even be seen again until 1953. De Castries may have to call off further offensives, at least for a season. The French may even consider leaving Dien Bien Phu and fall back to the De Lettres line. The Viet Minh, on the other hand, seem poised to take the lead the next turn, but they still have supply limitations to grapple with. It will take at least a season to resupply the 2 divisions they have in the contested province. Maybe by then the French will be reinforced and will have redeployed and be more of a threat. Turn 4, Winter 1951. There are 2 schools of thought within the French command structure. One camp is now arguing for an immediate withdrawal from Dien Bien Phu. The forces committed there are now needed closer to the coast to help form a stronger defensive perimeter in front of the Duletra line. A competing school of thought, however, is vehemently opposed to this plan. They argue Dien Bien Phu remains a valuable strongpoint behind enemy lines. After all, with a defensive bonus, French units are always reasonably well protected in fortified positions. Just being there ties down a greater number of enemy units and keeps the Viet Minh preoccupied and generally distracted. Historically, Dien Bien Phu was meant to block the Vietnamese from pouring into Laos unopposed. In theory, Dien Bien Phu could also have been supplied overland through Laos by the French, provided they kept the communists out. So really, unlike in this game, there were important geopolitical concerns that affected French planning. Here, though, not so much, and yet after a die roll, it was determined that De Castries was persuaded not to give up on the fire base at the present time. French irregulars form up in Hoa Binh. Further, the French decide to push the Viet Minh out of Than Hoa from the north, with 2 naval assault divisions and the newly deployed 7th Regimental Combat Team. At this point, the Dien Bien Phu question is also being debated on the Vietnamese side. A faction of officers present Giap with a plan to raid the firebase at 1-to-1 odds to test its durability. Ultimately, a die roll determines the general is not yet persuaded. Instead, he orders a multi-pronged attack against the French in Hoi Duan and Yen Bay provinces. As a precursor, the 312 and 304 infantry divisions move out of Tai Nguyen to pick up and protect new supplies coming down from the north. More Vietnamese guerrillas form in Cao Bang. As far as the offensives are concerned, the 351st Artillery Division attacks Hoi Duan at 1-to-1 odds because the support it expected from 320 infantry got intercepted in Than Hoa. It wouldn't matter. It was a devastating success anyway. The Viet Minh destroy GM2, and the Foreign Legion 13th runs into Hoi Duan City. For the cost of 1 supply, the 316th pushes 1 group mobile out of the countryside into Yen Bay City. And lastly, the French offensive out of Ho Binh throws 320 infantry out of Than Hoa. They have to leave their supplies behind, but the brand new 7th Group Mobile is lost. This is the situation after turn 4, 1 year in game scale, 1951. Already the French war effort reached an inflection point. They must now face the abandonment of Dien Bien Phu to shore up defensive positions in the east. The sad part is the base itself is in no serious threat of falling through the spring of 1952. It is true that the Viet Minh are too short of supplies to launch that kind of operation. Unfortunately, the French anticipate a large attack from the north into Hoa Binh or Yen Bay early in the new year. So every single available military unit will need to be redeployed to counter this new threat. The French simply have to do everything they can to limit all further casualties. Any more losses will be permanent. So far, French luck has been abysmal. Every single time they have lost a unit in combat, the odds were far below 50% for such an outcome, more like 5 out of 16. So think about that. Almost everything that could go wrong has gone wrong for the French up to this point. In any event, the French still maintain the lead with 10 provinces against the Viet Minh's 8. 2 provinces remain contested. Turn 5, Spring 1952. Colonel de Castries overrules a small group of French officers that do not want to abandon Dien Bien Phu. They argue once they pull up their stakes, they may never hold that part of Vietnam again. Nevertheless, the French anticipate bigger problems elsewhere. Both Yen Bay and Hoa Binh are now vulnerable. It's going to take a significant redeployment of French forces to meet a more dangerous Vietnamese threat coming down from the north. The 1st Airborne drops into Hoa Binh province. The newly reformed 4th Group Mobile is rushed back into service in the same province to join with a group of French irregulars already there. The French airlift the 2nd Colonial Regulars out of Dien Bien Phu and land them in Hoa Binh City. The 3rd and 4th Naval Assault Divisions rush north from Than Hoa and arrive in Yen Bay province to meet the 1st Group Mobile outside the city. Now let's see what the Viet Minh had in store for the French. The Viet Minh opened the new year with a misdirection plan. It was not a popular option among the majority of Giap's commanders who anticipated a straightforward offensive into Yen Bay. Fighting nevertheless breaks out in both provinces in question. The 320th Infantry moves north into Maison to pick up supplies. Half of the 308 moves southeast from Lao Cai to attack Hoa Binh. The centerpiece of this unconventional plan saw the 304 Infantry swing around Yen Bay through Maison to hit Hoa Binh from the west. Unfortunately, the French caught the 316th moving out of Yen Bay, also ordered to join in on this attack. So instead of a hammer blow against Hoa Binh, the Viet Minh merely trigger 2 more 1-to-1 battles against the French western perimeter. In Yen Bay, finally a victory for the French. The 316 takes a loss and is thrown out of Yen Bay. In Hoa Binh, another French victory. The Vietnamese are defeated and spend 2 supplies for no gain. This is the situation after spring 1952. The French badly needed a reversal of fortune this turn, and they got it. They won 2 battles. They are still winning the game, 11 provinces to 8, with Hoi Yuan still contested. The Viet Minh will close the gap next turn, however. Dien Bien Phu is wide open. Vinh is also wide open in the south. Although half of the Vietnamese army is starved of supply, the French can't summon any more replacements beyond what they have scheduled. So, will the Viet Minh press an attack next turn, or take a full season off to redeploy and rearm for a much larger, all-out assault towards the end of the year? Turn 6, summer 1952, will be different from the other turns. Neither side plans any offensives. The French are in wait-and-see mode. In the meantime, they raise guerrilla fighters in Yen Bay province. They know it'll take an entire season for the Viet Minh to rearm and resupply. Once the French can get a look at the new arrangement of enemy forces, they will make their own adjustments, but for now they want more intel so as to have a better chance of meeting the next wave of attacks. Likewise, the Viet Minh spend the entire summer of 52 preparing for a major fall offensive. They deploy replacements for the torn-up 316. They move 351 artillery back to meet up with supplies coming down from the north. The 308 occupies the vacated Dien Bien Phu position. The 304 gets new supplies from the north. And lastly, the Viet Minh activate guerrilla forces in Vinh province. The score now stands at 10-10, technically still a French victory. Next turn, we can expect to see at least 1 or 2 major battles. Turn 7 is the fall and winter of 1952. The French make adjustments to the defensive lines to best prepare for all-out assaults on Yen Bay, or perhaps Hoa Binh, or both. DNA-2 leaves Lang Son and is deployed to Yen Bay province. GM-3 airlifts out of Tai Nguyen City to cover the Naval Assault Division's position in the rear in case the Viet Minh tries something on the northern coastline. The 1st Airborne Group drops into Hoa Juan from Hoa Binh City. The 2nd Colonial Regulars take up new positions in Hoa Binh countryside. Opposite to this, Viet Minh commanders present General Giap with several options. One variant is indeed a grand slam against Yen Bay with everything that can reach the province. Another is an offensive divided between Hoa Binh and Yen Bay. Ultimately, though, a die roll determines that Giap favors a smaller scale Yen Bay assault from the north, but with a strong southerly right hook option into Than Hoa. So once again, we see Giap being somewhat unpredictable. The 308 and 351 artillery swing south. The Yen Bay component is left to the 320, 316, and 321 infantry divisions. This will be another 1-to-1 battle. So this is what the map looks like at the end of turn 7, halfway through the game. Notice Yen Bay still in French hands. Amazing. That's 3 battles in a row that they've won. 3 Viet Minh infantry divisions are repulsed for the cost of 3 more supplies. In this alternate version of history, Yen Bay province is the historical equivalent of Dien Bien Phu. Unfortunately for the French, however, they gave more ground in the south. The score is now 11-9 for the Reds. To start turn 8, the spring of 1953, the French will have to do more than just counterpunch. It's going to be a rare opportunity where they get more reinforcements than the Viet Minh. So who knows what could happen. It's not over yet, I know that much. So I'll wrap up part 1 of this playthrough session exactly halfway through the game. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for part 2 coming soon.